Hello everyone, Juxtaposition here. Today's video will be entitled Box Concealment. Now, the term killbox is a military term, and since we are at war, a world war, I think it's incumbent upon each of us to bone up on our vocabulary terms because the more you know about your opponent, in this case, our enemy, the safer you'll be, and the better you'll position that you'll find yourself to counter the moves that your enemy makes. I'm not kidding around. If you've been watching my channel, I think you all know that we're under maritime law, military law. We're under an authoritative system that controls our money and banking system, and they also control the military and all the surveillance intelligence communities within that. There's one bank for the whole world, one intelligence service for the whole world. There's one military NATO force for the whole world. And this includes the Star Wars satellites orbiting over us, as well as the 5G towers implanted at the perimeter of your village or your town or your city, and the smart grid, little blue caps that appear on top of your lighting lamp stanchions in your neighborhoods, in your residential communities. And for all you rural people out on the county roads outside the city limit, you have surveillance radio frequency stations planted along your county roads. So no one is getting out of this grid. Now, when I first thought of the term kill grid, and I think as the term was originally conceived, it involved a small area of maybe 100 meters or less, and it was a military targeted bullseye for troops to go in and kill the people on the property, with a perimeter team to guard in case anything went wrong. And it would also include surveillance 24/7, kill box. However, the reality is, in a 5G world with satellites above and military drones, which come out at least at nighttime, and with these other full spectrum dominance systems like Skaggs Island and military radio frequency transponder stations in close proximity to military air bases, we have 360-degree and above, and perhaps below, weapon systems. And remember, surveillance and weaponry are interchangeable. They're inextricably linked. You can't have a weapon system without a Raytheon missile guidance targeting system, which we've all been brainwashed into think means surveillance. Surveillance means targeting. If you're carrying a cell phone around, which is a mobile device, or you have a Garmin computer on your bicycle or motorcycle, or if you have you're hooked up to the apps such as Strava or Fitbit or some kind of biometric collections device, you are hooked up to a 5G smart grid system, and you are being targeted 24/7 in real time. So on one hand, you might think it's real convenient to be collecting meaningless telemetry data on your heart rate, pulse rate, temperature, speed, direction, where you've been, where you're going, where you started from. But you're basically volunteering for cancer, as one of my uncles used to tell me. There's no reason to volunteer for cancer, especially when you're not being paid to volunteer. This is like our United States military. They're always used as guinea pigs, like at the Edgewood Bioweapons Laboratory, where they wanted to find out if anthrax could kill you and if this new anthrax suit could prevent your death. Hey, let's use a United States Army soldier to figure that out, right? Right. But you don't pay them, I don't think, any extra to volunteer to be a laboratory rat. Anyway, you see that constantly. There's no concern for humanity amongst our opponents, our enemy. All right, so after this 5-minute introduction to Killbox, let me give you some examples. I'm going to give you London, England, and some people that you know and some people that you perhaps don't know that are in the shadows of the celebrities that you do know. And there are numerous kill boxes in the city of London. And by the way, there's kill boxes everywhere. So I'm just going to highlight London because it's an important strategic city. There are kill boxes in Manhattan, New York, obviously. There are kill boxes in Los Angeles, specifically in Benedict Canyon, which has been also referred to as Beverly Crest area of Los Angeles. Beverly Crest, Benedict Canyon are used interchangeably. And Bel Air, oh yes, you know where Art Linkletter lived, and Julio Iglesias, and Zsa Zsa Gabor, and Quincy Jones, and Ronald Reagan, who lived at 666 St. Cloud Road, next door to Jerry Lewis, who lived on St. Cloud Road, and in essentially the backyard of the Beverly Hillbillies mansion with 28 bathrooms, 750 Bel Air Road. That is now occupied by Lachlan Murdoch, the son of Rupert Murdoch, and he lives in that house, which is essentially just above the Ronald Reagan home. And there are kill boxes all over that area, including the Westlake Harvard School off Angelo Drive below the Sharon Tate murder scene. The Harvard Westlake School, or the Westlake Harvard School. Anyway, that school started out as a military boys-only school, and it remains an indoctrination center to this very day in 2023. All right, now let me give you some examples. Let's start in merry old England in London, and we're going to bone up. We're going to learn as much as we can about kill boxes. So you do know that Cass Elliot was done away with in a 2-bedroom apartment. Let me scratch that. 2-apartment building in London across the street from the Dorchester Hotel, right? We all know that, right? And that is in the Mayfair district of London, right? And the Mayfair district of London is very upscale, extremely expensive. The Grand Sheraton Hotel is next door to the Dorchester Hotel, which is next door to the Playboy Club and the Church of Scientology. And this is where Cass Elliot was killed. And the specific address where she was killed, I think, was, let me see if I've got that here. It was number 9 Curzon Place in the Mayfair district. Curzon is spelled Curzon. This apartment building with 2 apartments was attributed to being owned by Harry Nilsson, who's a songwriter and singer who's from Los Angeles, Hollywood. I don't know why he would own an apartment building in the Mayfair district of London, but I'm sure he didn't own it. But it's attributed that he owned it and that he let certain celebrity stars stay in his apartment when he wasn't there. Of course, it was 2 apartments, right? And you should know that Harry Nilsson is the straw owner. He's not the real owner. It's the same story with the Sharon Tate murder scene. The true owner of that property is the military intelligence. That's who owns all the homes on Sunbrook Drive, Angelo View Drive, Cielo Drive, Bella Drive. That's a military intelligence surveillance zone, porn film production studio zone, and a kill box as needed. And I'm not kidding around. I mean, look at who's been killed in that kill box that I just mentioned. Before Sharon Tate and Abigail Folger and Jay Sebring, Tom Coomer were murdered there, Superman George Reeves was murdered right around the corner from there. Susan Bierman was murdered after that. Paul Levy-Byrne was murdered before Superman was murdered. You know, the husband of Jean Harlow, the Jewish man who lived on Easton Drive, where Jay Sebring lived, in the same house where Paul Levy-Byrne shot himself in the back of the head with a .38 caliber pistol after typing up a suicide note and then putting his wife's perfume age 21, Jean Harlow's perfume on, and then blew his brains out from behind his head. That Paul Levy Byrne was killed in the kill box where Superman was killed, where Sharon Tate was killed, where Abigail Folger was killed, where Wojtek Frykowski was killed, where Tom Coomer, Jay Sebring was killed, where Stephen Parent was killed, just above where Thomas Ensay was killed, just above, walking distance up the hill from Thomas Ensay, a good, dear friend of William Randolph Hearst, who was having sex with William Randolph Hearst's girlfriend, Marion Davies, who scored the name of Marion Davies Drive just above the Sharon Tate murder scene. There's a Davies Drive, which was featured many times in the television police detective show Columbo, where they had Patrick McGowan living on Davies Drive. Second house from the end of the dead end of Davies Drive cul-de-sac. Cul-de-sacs are kill boxes. Cul-de-sacs are surveillance zones. Cul-de-sacs are surveillance and prisons. They are prisons. They are shelter-in-place detention centers. They can be used for porn films. They can be used for murder most foul. They can be used for poker games. They can be used for many private activities, which fits into the realm of money laundering, which is the concealment of the sources and uses of money. Money laundering also involves the concealment of the owners of the property titles of real estate, like Cielo Drive, which is really on Bella Drive, or Sunbrook Drive, where Timothy Leary lived and Oliver Silverstein visited, or 10048 Cielo Drive, the Doppelganger twin home to the murder house, where you can rehearse the murder. That title is concealed with straw owners, just as the property in London, allegedly owned by Harry Nilsson, number 9 Curzon Place in the Mayfair district, was concealed because this is where Cass Elliot was killed at age 32. And then 4 years later in 1978, Keith Moon was murdered in the exact same bedroom that Cass Elliot was murdered in. So I'm going to call number 9 Curzon Place a kill box. Okay? It's a kill box because we have 2 people killed. Then after 1978, we had Peter Sellers done away with a heart attack, which occurred literally 50 yards away, across the street at the Dorchester Hotel. So I'm going to include the Dorchester Hotel along with number 9 Curzon Place in the Mayfair district of London, across the street from Green Park. I'm calling that a kill box, the Dorchester Hotel. I've stayed at the Grand Sheraton Hotel, which is to the east side of the Dorchester Hotel. So perhaps the hotel I stayed at is a kill box also. It just turns out I'm alive and I'm doing this podcast, so I didn't get killed. You won't be surprised, or maybe you will, that the Harry Nilsson number 9 Curzon Place in Mayfair district, where Keith Moon and Cass Elliot were murdered, was interior decorated by none other than Ringo Starr through his fake company, a British interior design company founded by Robin Cruikshank and Ringo Starr. Ringo Starr owned 51%, and Robin Cruikshank owned 49%. I don't think either one of these knuckleheads owned any of it. But what I'm trying to tell you is Ringo Starr wasn't even supposed to be in the Beatles. It was Pete Best, who was the drummer and the most popular Beatle, not Paul McCartney. It was Pete Best. And a decision was made to switch out Pete Best and replace him with Ringo Starr, whose name is Richard Starkey, if you didn't know. Richard Starkey replaced Pete Best and then was paid some money to be a drummer. And then you can see that the Clandestine Services does not believe that the money that you have belongs to you. I don't care if your name is Neil Young, or if your name is Frank Zappa, or if your name is Judy Garland, or if your name is Bill Gates, or your name is Jeffrey Bezos, or your name is Steve Ballmer, who owns the fake owner of the Los Angeles Clippers basketball team, or Paul Allen, who's the land trust owner of all the property Killbox above Sharon Tate's house, the house where she was killed, not where she lived. That's all controlled by the Paul Allen Land Trust. You see, they're all fake. In other words, this is how you do money laundering. You pay it to a celebrity, then you instruct the celebrity to invest in certain real estate to create the illusion of who really owns the property. But I don't think Ringo Starr knows jack about interior design. But here's what I'm telling you. If your customers of your interior design company are Killbox residences or palaces in United Arabs Republic, Emirates, you're not designing beautiful wallpaper. You're installing surveillance devices. ROR, a design company, ROR, which stands for Ringo or Randy, or Robin or Ringo. Ringo or Robin, ROR, was incorporated in 1968, which was after Paul McCartney was allegedly killed in a car accident. Allegedly. Anyway, its offices, not to be a big surprise, were atop the Apple Records building at number 3 Savile Row, which is walking distance from the Dorchester Hotel, walking distance from where Cass Elliot was killed. The Apple Records headquarters is number 3 Savile Row. All these places, the Playboy Club, the Green Park, the Hyde Park, the Dorchester Hotel, the kill box where Cass Elliot and Keith Moon were killed, they're all within a few blocks of each other. It's very close. Anyway, let me give you some examples of the ROR interior design company founded by Ringo Starr and Robin Cruikshank, who already was in business with 2 other men that I'm not going to name at this time. He was already in the interior design business. Ringo's just the straw partner. He doesn't know anything. Anyway, here's examples of projects that ROR worked on. A $10 million contract to design the interior of the Mushraf Palace in Abu Dhabi, United Arab Emirates. The Sheeb Palace in Oman. The penthouse flat of the pornography magazine owner and property owner of Paul Raymond at the Fitchard Ridge house in Maryland, and his subsequent flat that he owned in Arlington House in Piccadilly Circus. Anyway, these homes were described as having beige marble floors with mirrors in the lobby, dining room, bathroom, cocktail bar, in other words, like a palace. Lots of mirrors, which were placed also above the ceiling, on the ceiling, to create, in the bedrooms, to create a toilsome, friendly bedroom situation. Does this sound like pornography? Does this sound like surveillance? Does this sound like collecting intelligence on people? The top floor of the Harry Nilsson number 9 Curzon Place, where Cass Elliot and Keith Moon were killed, the bathrooms featured etched glass mirrors, and one of them had an oak tree and a hangman's noose. That's how disturbing we're talking about. And I bet you there's surveillance listening devices and cameras in all of these interior design projects. So I'm calling ROR a British MI6 intelligence listening device company where they install surveillance devices into palaces or mansions or flats all throughout London, all throughout the United Arab Emirates and Oman and all around the world. And there's Ringo Starr as the fake owner of this surveillance company. I don't think that, who knows if Ringo Starr is aware of what they do with his money. I'm pretty sure he's clueless. But he is a good soldier. You notice Ringo Starr's still alive and he hasn't been whacked. So I think Ringo is playing along and living the longest life that he can possibly do after having signed on with the Beatles, which was a completely socially engineered deliveries platform for social messaging. All right, so then let me turn my attention away from merry old London. Before I do, I'm going to mention Regency Park, and where Paul McCartney had a home at 7 Cavendish Avenue and near St. John's Woods. And this is an area where Jimi Hendrix was killed. This is the area where Amy Winehouse was staying when she was killed or overdosed on drugs. So you got killing going on over there. That's where Brian Epstein was assigned to an armory over by what is now the London Zoo. The London Zoo is at Regency Park. There was a Royal Army armory there where Brian Epstein was assigned. He then was in trouble for wearing an officer uniform and going into a gay bar in Piccadilly Circus. He was arrested for impersonating an officer, sent to a number of psychologists, and from there he magically went to the Royal Academy of Art, Dramatic Art, and then became a manager for the Beatles. And then he was done away with in Sussex in his bed in 1967. Goodbye, Brian Epstein, who was no longer really managing the Beatles once they signed a contract with EMI, which is RCA, full-on control. Anyway, now I will leave London and I will return to my favorite hamlet, Los Angeles and Beverly Crest, Benedict Canyon, and Bel Air. But what I wanted to tell you, folks, is that the site where Sharon Tate was killed, which they want to tell you that was 10050 Cielo Drive. Today it's 10066 Cielo Drive, even though it's really still on Bella Drive and Sunbrook Drive, and it's above the Doppelganger address of 10048 Cielo Drive. What I wanted to tell you is that there were a series of fake owners of that property, which was purchased in November 1941, before Pearl Harbor happened. The property, undeveloped hillside on Cielo Drive, nestled between Angelo Drive and Cielo Drive, was the properties that became the Sharon Tate murder scene. And it also became Sunbrook Drive, and it also became Angelo View Drive, which is off Davies Drive, which is off Angelo Drive. You're going to have to Google map this to understand what I'm saying. This is already in the same zip code where Rudy Valentino was living on Bella Drive at 1436 Bella Drive. This is where Doris Duke moved into. She's part of the Illuminati. This is in close proximity to where the Patrick McGowan fake home on Davies Drive is located. At the very end, the dead end of Davies Drive is really close to the Rudy Valentino / Doris Duke home on Bella Drive is a baseball throw away from the dead end of Davies Drive. In other words, Davies Drive cul-de-sac, if you punch through, would connect up with Bella Drive, which connects up to the Sharon Tate murder scene. So you see, they look like they're dead ends, but you could walk across to the other cul-de-sac rather easily if you had a little pathway, which these places do have pathways. This is the situation that's true below the Art Linkletter home, which encompasses Zsa Zsa Gabor and Julio Iglesias, and then later Quincy Jones. There's a cul-de-sac that is where soldiers could easily walk up a pathway and murder everybody ever at Zsa Zsa Gabor's home or Quincy Jones's home or Art Linkletter's home. In other words, there's soldier housing for murders, for NATO soldiers. And you know that's the case over where the Menendez family was killed, right? Jose and Kitty Menendez were killed at 722 North Elm Drive in Beverly Hills. But you know the homes adjacent to are controlled by the same people that control the murder house. That's how you can figure out how, it wasn't some random killer going in committing a brazen crime on a cul-de-sac where you couldn't possibly escape without being seen, right? But if you're staying next door in the house next door, then you don't drive over, you walk over. And you walk over on a private pathway. All these places have hedgerows, they have Japanese gardeners, they have secret and private pathways. Guaranteed, all these places. And what I wanted to tell you is the Sharon Tate murder scene had a series of fake owners. It started out being Archeo Studios. What was her name? Davies? Marion Davies, I believe. No. All right. Well, anyway, then it went on later to be a psychologist, owned the property with his wife, Dr. Dewey, and my computer is not functioning the way I want it to, so everything's going hyper slow. It's like locked up. And then we had Rudy Altobelli, the fake owner, the homosexual television producer, and who was the alleged owner when the Sharon Tate murders happened. He died penniless, living in an above a garage apartment unit. So it didn't sound like he held on to his money because it didn't belong to him, right? So anyway, now of course I can't find it. But anyway, started out being a 21-year-old actress, part of Joseph Kennedy's RKO Pictures. And she was from France. And she spent, if you want to believe the story, she bought the property in 1941, and then it was completed in 1945, but she returned to France and never moved into the property. And that's because she never spent any time working on it. It's not her property. She's the fake owner. They just used her name. Then they sold it to a psychologist and his wife, and they never lived in it either. They rented it out, of course. Then it was Rudy Altobelli's property, right? Well, now Jeffrey Franklin, who's a television producer of Full House, and Bob Saget, who was recently murdered in Orlando at a Ritz-Carlton hotel. So what I'm telling you is that all the properties in that area are part of a kill box. And it's all very concealed, is it not? Anyway, that's my story today, is that you've got Ringo Starr, and he's doing business with a pornographer by decorating his home. Before we had Larry Flint and Hugh Hefner and Bob Guccione out in California and in the United States, we had all these pornographers functioning in merry old London, right? And you got Ringo Starr and his partner working on Paul Raymond's houses. Paul Raymond is a longtime pornographer. He owned Escort magazine, Men Only, Club, International, and of course Mayfair magazine. Mayfair named after the Mayfair district of London, which is near Piccadilly Circus. Mayfair, where Cass Elliot was killed. It was also a pornography magazine, Mayfair. All right? And supposedly Paul Raymond's daughter, Debbie, was murder-suicided in a heroin overdose in 1992 as he was transferring his business to her. And guess who else was interested in his pornography business? Well, Robert Maxwell, Ghislaine Maxwell's father, was doing business with Paul Raymond, a pornographer. And before Paul Raymond was in the nude magazine business, we had C. Arthur Pearson, and he was in that business before. So pornography has always been used as a pacification and control mechanism in London, and also New York, and also Los Angeles, and also Chicago. So it's a standard tool in the toolbox, the kill box, for the clandestine service community. Thanks for listening. Have a great day. Bye-bye.